And welcome to our webinar. This is the importance of network monitoring for IP surveillance. Today we have Josh Snow, who is the Chief Technology Officer and co-founder of Vunetrix. Josh has over 10 years in the surveillance industry with a strong background in IP, and it includes his work as a CCNA. Josh worked as the Director of Engineering for a large Seattle-based integrator when he began to notice and see a common trend in the industry, and that was really that manufacturers, customers, and integrators were not fixing problems for the long haul necessarily, but merely fixing them for a moment. So now Josh and Vunetrix have a mission to help security professionals learn how to implement network monitoring platforms that are specially designed for the surveillance industry. Joining us as well today is Todd Pettinger. As an enterprise systems manager, Todd is responsible for system design, implementation, and support of Contava's largest enterprise customers. Also encompassed in his role is research, and Todd also is responsible for selection of new products to determine which will be used internally at Contava and also sold to customers. Todd brings over 16 years as an IT professional, with the last 4.5 years as a security integrator. He specializes in physical security, video surveillance, and also the technology that these systems are implemented on. He has pretty much a full alphabet of IT credentials and multiple security certifications, really too many to mention here. Let's just say Todd is truly capable of speaking to why Vunetrix passed the Contava Technical Testing Combine. My name is Barbara Shaw. Hello. I am the Director of Education with PSA Security Network, and I will be moderating the call today. I have just a few items before I hand it over to Josh. If you have any questions throughout the course of the presentation, please type them into the question panel for us. We'll also have a Q&A period of time after Josh's presentation today. And if you do run into any technical difficulties, I will be monitoring chat, so please type that into me, and we will do our best to get you back up and running should you run into any problems. With that, I'm going to hand it over to Josh. Josh?
Thanks, Barbara. I appreciate it. Thanks, everybody, for joining. As Barbara said, today we're going to talk about health monitoring for IP surveillance, and obviously the center of that is Vunetrix. Just a quick background on Vunetrix and kind of who we are is, like Barbara said, I was working for an integrator in the Northwest and as the Director of Engineering and Sales for a number of years. And one of the things that we consistently ran into was being able to manage networks effectively, and that's kind of where Vunetrix is born. I'll get into a little more detail on that. But the main focus today is really I want to talk to you guys about building annual revenue through managed services. It's kind of a hot topic in the industry right now of understanding how you can really start to tap into an annual or a monthly recurring revenue. It's a mystery to a lot of integrators and dealers, and that's why I asked Todd to join us as well, because he's really figured out how to add that vein of revenue into his business, and I think that's extremely important. Because if you can, obviously if you can manage networks and health networks, that's great, but how do you make money off of it? And that's the real key. And there's what I really found about Vunetrix and a lot of my dealers is that they've been able to add a new stream of revenue rather than kind of chasing cranes. We have this consistent amount of revenue that's coming in every month or every year that you can count on for the base of your business. And that's really what I want to talk about today as well as the solution. Yeah, so what is Vunetrix? What is health monitoring? So Vunetrix is scalable health monitoring. What that means to you is that we can monitor every server, every camera, every switch within your customer's network infrastructure and provide you notifications and understanding of what's happening, regardless of manufacturer. So you're no longer at the mercy of those manufacturers for understanding what's happening, or if all of a sudden you lose your S2 or your Lenel relationship or access, you move from Genetec to Milestone or whatever it may be, depending on what is important in your market. It's the core infrastructure of what's happening. It's still going to be scalable health monitoring regardless of what manufacturers you guys choose. Todd will speak to this as well, but consulting and engineering on every sale, this is extremely important in health monitoring, because the last thing, especially in the PSA network, that we expect you guys to do is hire guys like Barbara was saying about Todd about his alphabet soup and certifications. Those guys aren't You guys don't come cheap on an hourly rate. So what we want to do as an extension of our service, and we include this in every sale, is consulting and engineering. So helping you design the health monitoring, helping you set up the right notifications, and helping you really deliver the message to your end users effectively without having to take on the burden of someone on your staff that's going to cost too much and really drive the price of your jobs up. Baseline trending and proactive maintenance, which is really huge within health monitoring, and just overall for deploying IP surveillance solutions. What has the system done over the last day, week, month, year? And so you can really start to understand where the system should be and if you're out of line with your system. And that's what we found has been extremely valuable in all our clients, is understanding what has worked well, like when I'm looking at it, and then what's out of that range. And so that really allows you to do some proactive maintenance on the system and understand where you should be operating in, and really look forward to providing some kind of progressive reporting to the customer to understand, hey, this is where we've been, and if you want to add this or do this, we're going to need to be able to make these changes. Why? Not just Vinetrix, but why any health monitoring? Constant engagement. One of the struggles that I think you guys face and I face as an integrator is after the job. So you do a big job for your large hospital or your multi-location retail chain. How do you stay engaged with that client? You can go grab golf or grab a couple beers with the client, but how do you make it relevant to business? And so with health monitoring, you can constantly provide some reports and engagement and say, hey, look, I'm starting to see that this UPS is failing. I'm starting to see these cameras aren't operating the way they're supposed to. So it allows you to have some constant engagement with the client that's relevant around business. So outside of those construction, or those replacements, you're going to be able to help them optimize their current solution. Mitigating risk. So when I was an integrator, essentially mitigating risk is we would constantly be bleeding of margin on jobs, especially IP jobs, to where we would have to go back out on site and fix a switch or a camera or something that was out of our control because we didn't have a really good vision of what was happening on the network, and so we would be spending labor hours on stuff that wasn't necessarily out of our responsibility and was outside of the scope of the job. But in order to keep the relationship, and we would have to spend hours on that, and so we would see a 2 to 8% erosion of our margin and our gross profit, which was not good, right? So with Vinetrix and health monitoring, we can provide a project commissioning and a closeout with that. And so it really allows you to have that technical confidence to show the client, hey, everything's operating the way it's supposed to. We're operating the way it should. If you sign the sheet, everyone sign the sheet and say, hey, look at this report. That can be your really hard close, and so that moving forward, you can tell that client or end user, any other calls out to this site, we're going to have to charge our service rate. So it allows you to have a really good handoff into your service team, which has been a struggle for a lot of integrators and dealers, is moving from project phase to service phase. With the reporting and information that we can give you, you can make that a very, very clear handshake. And then new streams of revenue. And to talk about that, I'm going to bring Todd in from Contava.
Hi, guys. Thanks, Josh. Basically, Contava started using Vinetrix a year and a half ago, and we were an early adopter of the technology. And at first, a lot of the things that we used it for were almost all technical. With my background strength in IT, as Barbara alluded to, I was delighted to have a tool that gave me a graphical representation of the network for a lot less money than a lot of the other tools that are out there and available. But soon, the integrator hat on my head also said, hey, this isn't just a technical tool that can be used for technical purposes. We can also use this to generate new streams of income. We can sell this product to install into customer facilities and make our lives a lot easier, but also be able to become stickier with our client, to really blossom the relationship between us and our client. And so a couple of the ways that we use Vinetrix at Contava to generate revenue is two-pronged. There's just the basic sale of the box, service contract, and all that kind of good stuff. But there's also a second stream. We have started to get away from just the looking at Vinetrix as a cost that is displayed to the customer that you have to sell the customer on again. And we've actually started burying it into the cost of our SMAs, our service and maintenance agreements. And what that does is you're selling yourself as an integrator and your capabilities as an integrator and saying, listen, we're not only going to ensure that the system that we've installed for you is up and running, but it is health monitored at all the time. And we're going to do that for no extra cost. It's bundled into the cost of our SMA. And so we found that not only just selling the VNetrix product as a service or as a product itself has helped generate new revenue for some customers, but in others, it's the SMA and the add-ons that come with it that really have improved relationships with our clients, and they're finding a lot more information out of the reports that we deliver to them, and we're making a lot more money out of it.
Thanks, Todd. So, that's a big deal for a lot of integrators, and how, besides just selling box, and how do you make yourself different from the guy down the road? And Todd's been a great partner of mine, being able to really blaze this new path together of capturing these streams of revenue, and even talking to and going back to existing clients has been really big too for Todd and I. Is working with these existing Katava clients that he's already sold large systems to, hundreds of thousands of dollars sometimes. How do you get more money out of those guys without feeling like you're squeezing them? And really providing a service like this of management, they're seeing it and they're like, oh my gosh, why haven't I seen this before? This is amazing. And so you're offering a service to them to your existing relationships and able to capture more revenue on top of the relationships you already have, which is really the name of the game, because acquiring new customers is expensive. So how do you sell more to your existing customers? And that's one of the key things that Katava's been able to find out. So who is using VNetrix? Who are the end users that you should be going after? First and foremost, enterprise and multi-location. So right now, there are no guinea pigs in what we do. So I have customers. Qualcomm in San Diego is over 8,000 cameras with us. CenturyLink is over 500 servers with us. The LDS Church is one of the largest milestone users on the planet. So we've got a lot of large customers and multi-location customers. So if you have those marquee customers within your dealer base, those are absolutely no-brainer for us, because they're something that we should have. There's something that you should have our solution in to really ensure that all the things we just talked about, mitigate risk, provide some technical confidence, and increase your exposure within those clients. Project commissioning and cloud. One of the things that we're starting to see a trend on, there's two ways that we go to, and I'm going to go into a little more detail, but I'll talk about it now. Two ways we go to market, our server-based solution. So like Todd was alluding to, a box that sits on site, every other MDR and server talks to that box throughout the country, and then that's your single pane of glass to monitor all your cameras, all the local subnets, everything that's happening on the infrastructure. So for our large clients, that's what we do. Is we have a server that sits inside their data center at Qualcomm, everything around the globe, every other MDR, then report back into that server, and then we can see every camera, every switch, everything that's happening. But one of the pieces that we're starting to see, especially from our dealer channel, is they're looking for a way to close out projects and provide that report understanding. So, okay, like, this is the end of the project. Here's a report that we can add that shows that we did everything we're supposed to, that H.264, certain frames a second, bandwidth, it was all operating. So we let this run for a month during your commissioning time, and you have that ability to hand that off to the client. And that's where our cloud solution comes in, because it's a very cost-effective way for you guys to have 24/7, 365 monitoring. Even if you only turn it on for during that project commissioning time, you can really have an ability to give that client some exposure into the network infrastructure and be able to tease them a little bit to say, here, this is what we can do for you if you sign up for the service contract, right? But it also protects you and does that mitigating risk portion of it that you wouldn't necessarily have or couldn't afford on a lot of those jobs. But the cloud's a cost-effective way to do that. Controlling the experience, this is big for me when I was a dealer, is that a lot of times we're the ones left holding the bag as the dealers, right? And Todd and Katava, me when I was a integrator, it's not the manufacturers that are coming there to save you. You're trying to figure out how to get Milestone to talk to this solution, to get this server going, to have this access control panel do what it's supposed to get these cameras to do it. What we really allow you to do is control the experience, so you understand what's happening on the network, that you can really stand up to IT and say, this is the way it should be doing it, so you have the best practices. I see that consistently with integrators, is they really are starting to be like, well, IT says this and IT does that. You really got to stand up for what you believe in and be the expert in here in the security space. That's what Todd's done really well, and it's important to be that expert. You guys know this stuff, not the IT guys a lot of times, and become a partner with them. And the only way that you're going to garner their respect is providing information and understanding what's happening on the infrastructure, and that's what health monitoring is going to get you. And so at this point, I'm going to move over to showing the dashboard a little bit for you guys. We'll do questions after that. So I'm logged into my cloud demo infrastructure right now. I'm going to zoom in just a hair for you guys here. That was something we talked about. So everything we do is what's called sensor-based, so metric-based. You see, like on these IP cameras, ping and bandwidth, those are two sensors. 24 ports on a switch, 24 sensors. That's how we manage and provide that metric and information. I'm going to just jump around a little bit and show you some of this stuff. Obviously, for more details and pricing, we're going to be able to break off PSA. But so, for instance, on my Dell 515, it's a server that's a very popular server that gets sold in our space. It's just a standard Dell PowerEdge box. Whether you're doing Dell or HP, we can do the same thing, or any number of different servers. We put a probe directly on that server, that MVR, that then reports back up either into the cloud or reports back up into our appliance that happens to be sitting on your customer site. So what are some of the things and the metrics that we're going after that we're monitoring? Disk-free. I was just at a large client, large university, to where they really have to make sure that their archive retention that they're maintaining 30 days. So, you know, ask yourself that right now. When you guys are out there talking to your clients, consulting with them, do you need 30, 60, 90 days? How are you making sure that's happening? The reality is you're putting enough storage and hoping that it maintains that, right? Well, we can change the game on that a little bit and ensure that you're maintaining 30, 60, 90 days of archive retention, 6 months in, 3 years in, and providing the reports that you need to be able to manage that effectively. And then it's going to proactively send you a notification if you're violating those thresholds. A new technician of yours just changed everything in JPEG, and you're only going to have 2 days of storage. We're going to immediately know that. You're going to get a notification with your service team, and then you're able to change that and ensure that you can maintain the integrity of their archive. So you're really starting to change and mold the end user experience for archive retention and making sure the promises you made day one are going to stay true on day 1,000. The other things that we're looking at, we can look at each individual NIC card on that server to see that, hey, is my NIC for my cameras running the way it's supposed to? Is my NIC for my client access running the way it's supposed to? And then things like CPU load. I'm just going to click on CPU here. This is an important one because as you add more cameras, as you add more megapixel cameras, it's going to push the server harder. And I see this consistently is the days of the DVR are gone to where it's a fixed number of cameras, a fixed number of devices that's ever going to change. We are constantly changing these NVRs and servers. And as they're aging in there, but yet we're taxing them more and more. And there isn't a fixed amount that these can run on, right? So it's not a stopping point to say, hey, we can't run any more on this. You're going to break it essentially. Essentially, it's going to start to crash and run slow. But how do you know when that point is so you can maximize your investment? You use a solution like ours. So as the CPU drives higher, as you add more cameras to that, send yourself a notification, and we work with you on this, that if it goes over 50% CPU over for 3 minutes, send a notification out. And then you can talk to your customer and say, hey, looks like we're seeing some spikes in CPU, that's going to degrade performance. Or at the end of the year, you review as a part of a service contract like Todd does and say, hey, these 3 servers are running extremely high. We need to shift some cameras around, and you got to put some budget in to add some more servers. And then you're arming your security and IT team to go back to the CFO and show them some real data as to why they need what they want. So beyond CPU, we can do memory, the same drill. You need to know how much memory you're having on the box that's available. Physical disk, so this is a big one. So right now you guys are selling RAID drives out on most of your solutions, right? So RAID 5, RAID 6, whatever it is, there's some kind of RAID controller in your MVRs. How are you managing those individual disks? The short answer is you're not. You're waiting for it to beep, and you're waiting for it to your customer to go in there and say, hey, like I think there's some beeping going on in my server room, and then you send a technician out. That's not controlling the experience. What we're going to allow you to do is have the physical disk on each of those servers send you notification when it's been pulled, but also more importantly, when it goes into predictive failure mode. So when the physical platter of those RAID drives starts to die, it's going to send your service team or your team a notification, and then you're going to be able to ship out a disk or send your service tech out there with a disk. So now you're really changing that experience. And so now from that customer saying, wow, I didn't even know my hard drive was going to go down. It's like, yeah, we got a notification on it. So now they're really starting to get some real value out of that service contract, because that's always been a tougher sale of the service contract is we're going to wash your cameras and back up your access control database. That's really something that's extremely proactive that's actually happening. You can see each of these disks are online, but then this one's in full alarm mode right here. We have an error in the disk state. And then we can also look at the actual system health of the actual server. So temperature of the box, power supply. There's all kinds of different metrics that we can tap into and send you statuses of what's actually happening on the physical box and layer 1 information. So from there, I'm going to jump up to kind of cameras, which is the bread and butter of what we do. We ping every single camera, and we provide bandwidth of the cameras. And so bandwidth is extremely important, as you know, and it really provides us the canary in the coal mine to make sure that the system is operating the way it's supposed to. So this is a 5 megapixel Axis 1347. On the low end, it's run about 443 kilobits a second. The high end, it's run about 876 kilobits. You can see this morning, it was completely offline, and I got a notification when that happened. The camera went offline for a few hours, and you're going to know that what's happening. What this is powerful for you guys is it really allows you to understand if you sell a 5 megapixel camera and it's only running at 50 kilobits a second, Milestone or Gentex can say, yep, that camera's up and running. What does that mean for the end user? They paid you a premium for a high-resolution camera, but they're getting VGA resolution. When they go back and look at that liability that they need to see and they're expecting to see a good shot, and it ends up being a $150 shot, essentially that's forced disk, they're not going to be happy. And so now you can really start to optimize the system and ensure that it's running the way it's supposed to be running. And then on the flip side, if you start to say, then you work with PSA and you get a 5 megapixel camera that's running at 800 kilobits a second, and all of a sudden it goes up to something that looks like this, 20 megs a second on MJPEG, that's going to saturate the network, and you're going to start to get some complaints from IT, and maybe the shot may look incredible, but you're running at 20, 50 times what H.264 is, and maybe your technician says, but the shot's really pretty. And essentially, you can set yourself a notification if it goes above those thresholds, above a megabit a second, 5 megabits a second, to be able to understand that you're out of the design threshold that you originally set. And so that looks like this. So like right now, this particular camera is an IQI, and it's running MJPEG. It's 20 megs a second. So same resolution as the Access camera, but it's running at basically 20 times the amount of bandwidth, or 25 times the amount of bandwidth. So if that happens, you're going to get a notification that looks like this. Email alert. So I said, hey, if it goes above 5 megabits a second, I want to know about it. Last result, 7.8 megabits a second. So it's not that the camera's down. I have this green checkbox to tell me the camera's up. It's not that the camera's down. It's that it's outside of the design threshold. Milestone, Genetec, Exact, they're not going to tell you that, because to them, the camera's up and running. But you're really starting to saturate the network for some bandwidth. That's going to mean more storage. You're only going to get 6 days of storage rather than the original 60 that you talked about. And so immediately you guys can log into the system, you can send a technician out and start to look at what's happening before that becomes a major issue. The other piece that we do on cameras is we ping them every 30 seconds. And what that looks like is this. So we throw 100 pings on the network every 30 seconds, and we really provide latency statistics on this. So what that means to you is that from the NVR, the server, to the camera, sometimes you provide the switch, sometimes you don't. It really doesn't matter. You still need to understand what's happening from your recording engine out to the cameras. So we ping from there out to the cameras 100 times every 30 seconds. From that, we give you maximum, minimum, and average of those. Now you understand if you put 100 cars on the road and 2 of those aren't coming back, 2% packet loss. So it really allows you to see what's the slowest car that's coming back, what's the fastest car, and what's the average. And so if you're starting to see these spikes in latency that are taking a long time to get out to the cameras, that's going to mean video degradation, and that should be the absolute first thing you fix. It's really hard to see latency unless you're actually putting a tiny amount of data on the line, which we are. So if all of a sudden IT is doing these dumps for the MRI at the hospital, and is affecting your video, you might be sending technicians out there and spending money on it that you shouldn't because you can't control that because someone else is affecting the switch backplane, or that switch is starting to die and it can't handle the amount of traffic that you're putting on the backplane. So it really allows you to be able to see that is that network throughput, is there any bottlenecks from the server out to the camera that are causing you issues? Especially in a multi-location client, this can become a major problem. Switches, so any managed switch, we're going to provide some visibility and give you a virtual patch panel. So I have a switch here in my lab with a 24-port switch, and so I can see what's on each individual port. So port 2 has an Access M1011 and running at 3 megabits a second. I have an Access 1347 on port 3, and you can see which ones are empty at 0 kilobits. But what also we can do is provide you information if the actual switch port becomes unconnected. So if the cable comes unconnected and someone's pulled that cable, it's going to alarm and send you a notification. Not just 0 bandwidth, but copper points stop touching. So now you understand if someone's been messing around with your patch panel and someone pulled the actual cable versus there's just no network traffic on it. So now you can see what's happening on the switch layer to see, okay, yeah, I understand that we're having too much bandwidth on this particular port, or the overall switch is really being saturated at this point. One thing I do want to briefly show you guys back at the server level. I'm not going to, kind of technical, so I'm not going to go too deep into it, but what a lot of the manufacturers do if they start to run into a problem, if you call them and you're starting to have some issues, like they run what's called Wireshark, if anyone's familiar with that. And what we do is we can run a 24/7 version of Wireshark that looks at the headers of the packets that are hitting the server. And what that means in real-world terms is that we know what IPs, what logical ports are being used, what MAC addresses are being used, and we can pull a trace file from any particular time, so Genetec or Milestone or Exact crashed at 3:45 in the morning. I can pull that trace file up and see what IPs are being used, what the percentage of bandwidth was being from that particular connection represented. Now you can really start to troubleshoot things like multicast issues, broadcast issues, individual computer-to-computer issues that particular sniffer was able to see. It's just been really powerful for me to be able to have, especially in cases of where I've worked with like a casino client to where they weren't sure if the video was getting to the server or not. I can definitively tell you by looking at this, because this is looking at the NIC card of your MDR, and if it's hitting this and it sees that this amount of bandwidth is hitting there, but yet Milestone or Genetec Exact is not recording it, you can see that it's hitting the server, but something's happening within the server infrastructure where it's not taking. So that the problem isn't the networks. You can't really blame the network at that point because it's being delivered to the server. So it allows you to have one more arrow in your quiver to really understand and eliminate certain parts of the problem so you can really focus your efforts and bring in the right resources to solve some of those more complex problems that you guys run into in the field with IP surveillance. Some of the ancillary stuff that we can cover, like UPS. So I can tell you right now, if you can ask a customer, like, hey, how long do you need to be running on your UPS if the power goes out? You know, and right now I have 102 minutes on my UPS. And as you add more things to your UPS, as it starts to run harder, as the batteries die, you can set a notification limit of a half hour or whatever it is that's important to you, and you can get a notification if that violates that threshold. So now things like UPS and stuff doesn't get a whole lot of visibility. Can be sent notifications to your service team, and you guys can proactively replace those as that email comes out. Say the battery dies on it, so you're going to know about it, and you can replace it. We can do temperature. So there's a third-party little box that we can do that doesn't cost much, a couple $100, that you can put into your data centers, and it's got a little temperature probe on it, and you can see the ambient temperature of that school district's MDRs, because they don't, they don't do AC very well, right, in this room closet. And so you can see that at 85 degrees down to 80 degrees. And you can say, all right, this should never go above 90 degrees. I don't want to know when that happens. And so now you have some environmental controls on some of these deployments that's important to you to be able to manage that. And you can provide that as a report back to your end users to say, hey, you guys are really starting to got to provide better cooling for these servers. Otherwise, we're going to start to have some issues, and they're going to break down. So alarm control, I just click the alarm button up here. So basically what this allows you to do is, on a particular client, you can go and acknowledge individual alarms. And so I can say, hey, this error in the sys state that we had on our on our Dell 515, I can go, okay, I want to acknowledge this alarm. You can put a trouble ticket in that you put in your own internal trouble ticket. I open up trouble ticket 356, and I dispatched Todd on site. So now, in the actual customer system or your cloud system, you have a way to manage alerts and notifications of what's happening. So that moved that from a full alarm to an acknowledged alarm. So we still have an error there, but now we know that it's been acknowledged and someone's working on it, and then that note's going to show up to say that Todd and trouble ticket 356 is being worked on. So each individual client, whether you're logging into their server or in the cloud, you can see all your clients, and you're able to look at these trouble tickets from a single queue to see what's happening. So it's a way for you to manage proactively what's happening in your customer's system. And that's another thing that's important that I'm going to show you here on a video of one of my larger clients here is we have a mapping functionality that provides you geo-coordinates of every single server of where your MDRs are throughout the country, real-time status, green being good, red being bad, yellow being in a warning status. And you can see that you can zoom in a particular area and provide you a really level of detail that's unmatched at this point to really understand what's happening in a particular region. And then each individual location you can hover over and understand what devices you have there. So gone are the days of managed by spreadsheet, or you have something scratched in a CRM somewhere. How often does that stuff get irrelevant? Like the IP addresses have changed, something's changed. If that changes here, it's going to go into an alarm status. So now you know that those are actually the IP addresses of those access control panels. That's actually the server status, right? It's not just sitting on some dormant spreadsheet. This is what you're seeing, real-time, real status of what's happening in the Denver area. So as I zoom in further, I can click on each of these individual devices and really start to understand what I have out in the field and manage that proactively. And whether you choose to give that access to the customer or not, it's up to you. Maybe they want to have this in their SOC. You know, I click on an individual location and I can see, hey, here's that location right here. I have an alarm on it. Scroll down a little bit, and I'm going to start to see that I have an error in my disk status. That error, that disk has completely failed. And so now I need to be able to replace that disk, add that to inventory to be able to be shipped out to that site. So I've got to be able to take care of that, right? And there's also a disk controller status failure on that particular box. So it really allows you to manage in a multi-location environment, know where you should be spending your resources, know what's down by what location, and know what your IP address is, and know what your camera status is on a location-by-location basis. Yeah, so here's the what I just put on there. So trouble ticket 356, and I dispatched Todd on site. So now everyone else who logs into this knows that the system administrator, JDemo, which is me, has set that in there, and that's what's happening. You know, still down, but now I know that I've dispatched someone's working on this, and it's been acknowledged. So I can look at the sensors, which are just the metrics we talked about. So CPU, memory, those are just all sensors. So I can look at, you know, top 10 lists on a particular client. I can go in and say, I want to know the highs, the lows. I want to know who's causing me problems at a particular location. So I can look at my highest bandwidth users, my fastest pings, my slowest pings, my most used CPU, my least used CPU. So it really allows you from a quick snapshot just to be able to see who are my problem children that I need to address immediately, and really start to, especially when you start to have your larger clients, this becomes really valuable because, again, you can start to spend your resources wisely and be like, okay, 26% CPU starting to creep up here. I should go look at that, right? You know, or I have some switch ports down. I need to go manage that right now. And then finally, before I kind of open it up for questions, is we can provide a report. So you can provide a daily report, monthly report, weekly. What I would say on this is, especially when we're talking about revenue, generating revenue, this is that every 6 months you provide a report on hard drive status or camera status or whatever it is, a report to that end user. But you can provide this and email this, or have your salesperson go out and engage them as part of that constant engagement model that we preach. And then you're talking about what's actually happening in their network and providing them some proactive management. And then that's really going to be a powerful part of a service contract offering or some proactive management. And then you're showing what you're doing. Hey, we fixed this particular UPS issue here back on August 18th. You know, you had an issue here with only 15 minutes. We replaced UPS, and then the data recalculation for 40 minutes. The customer would say, oh, that's great. I got to make sure that I have above 40 minutes. My regional manager gets mad at me. So it really allows you to have a level of measurement, proactive reporting that you just don't have with any individual systems right now. So I appreciate you guys' time, and I want to really kind of open it up for some questions at this point.
Thanks, Josh. This is Barb. On that note, that this is part of a service contract, services are so important. Obviously, our customers know that we want to earn the right to offer them that combination of products and services that solve their problems, but also make us the integrator of choice that they want to partner with for a long time, right? So on that proactive reporting and those measurements, is that something that you help the integrators kind of figure out and put together, and how to configure that with their clients and in marketing that particular part of the service?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a good question. So basically, that's one of the bigger things that we do is we demystify the health monitoring part of this. So we provide, every customer is different about what reports they want, when they want them, and so we help you set those up every time. So these reports generated at a certain time. You want to see CPU load, you want to see ping time on certain types of cameras, you want to see archive retention. There's so much data in here that you really only want to expose the data that's important to that client and important to your relationship and important to you on that particular project. And so that's what we work with you on, to create the right workflow of data, notifications, and reporting based on what you're trying to accomplish with that particular project.
Okay, thanks, Josh. Another question is, so what's the real win here for the end user, for the customer? So basically, what do you say when a customer says, hey, thanks, but shouldn't our IT department be doing this?
It's a great question. And so what we've seen consistently is that the security departments that aren't taking a proactive role won't exist. And so if you have relationships with those guys and you feel like the relationship's strong, I would be extremely wary, because those guys aren't going to exist in the same capacity or even have any decision-making capability, so you will be marginalized. So as a PSA dealer, you need to shift your relationships to the people that can actually control that, right? So that network infrastructure, if IT handles it and they're allowing that to happen, they will be completely marginalized in years to come, and they essentially would just become the director of the physical security guards, not the IP surveillance system. I see it time and time again. And then you need to be the voice with them to say, hey, you guys, this is your system. You need to manage and have the ability and the processes locally. And the argument that I consistently make to IT, and it works every time, is that you don't want to manage the surveillance system. Let the security officer and the PSA local dealer manage these alerts and notifications, and then engage IT when it's appropriate, and then we're not taxing IT's resources because they're already taxed as it is, and that's a total win-win. The security team gets the visibility and the information they need in a timely manner, and the IT team doesn't get annoyed with consistent, hey, I'm starting to see this camera down. Well, that takes a day from the research staff. So it really becomes a win-win when you have a business methodology discussion around it.
Thanks, Josh. Another question along that same line. So for the integrator who's going out to really present this concept to the customer, who do they really need to have a conversation with? Obviously, you don't want to leave your security contact out that you're dealing with and cause any political issues. But you also don't want to call too low in the IT space and have somebody who just sees this as another issue that they're going to contend with and they don't have time for. So who are the right contacts to start this dialogue with on the customer side?
Todd, are you still there? Is that something that you can answer? I mean, I can definitely answer, but you've got the front end dealer experience.
Yeah, absolutely. From Contava's experience, I mean, one of the things that Vunetrix has really changed the game for us is in the fact that we are able to have conversations with a higher level people who are pulling the purse strings, and we like to engage first your security folks, the manager of security, the director of security, whoever that is. Oftentimes, if we encounter any resistance with what is perceived in the industry as an IT initiative, what we like to do is then be able to go to the IT director, the IT manager, and say, hey, listen, we have a product here that even if you already do some type of monitoring, we can live in harmony with you. We can install this product, and it focuses in on the security aspect of the network. We're not here to take over you or your team. We're certainly not here to tell you how to do your job. We want to live in harmony with you. Or if you don't have something set up already, we can help you reduce the number of calls that come in from the security folks to your guys. As Josh spoke about just a few seconds ago, the IT guys in most organizations that I've dealt with are extremely busy. They're taxed. They're not. They see security as just another application on the network, which of course it is. The amount of criticality that they give to a security network problem may not be what the security folks see when they are the guys, the people who are interested in protecting life, protecting assets, protecting property. So Unitrix really helps us have that conversation with the people at the very top and then work its way back down, where the justification for the spend is an easier case to make because it saves the resources of the people who need to be dealing with other things in IT. It also helps the security guys trust the fact that their network is up and running, and when something is not up and running, they'll be notified of it, or their integrator will be notified of it, and we'll just come and fix it. Josh spoke a couple minutes ago about the constant engagement, and we really have that constant engagement with our customers now at Pentava. We have monthly or quarterly meetings with some of the reports that Josh just showed you, and we feel that's really changed the game for us. It allows our customer to feel engaged, and they're very much aware of the value add that we as an integrator bring to them. So, yeah, absolutely.
Thanks, Todd. I have a question for both you and Josh. So, holistically, in talking about health monitoring, why is it so important to the surveillance industry? I mean, Josh, you touched on this in your demo, but I mean, as you're talking to customers, what are really the hot buttons that the integrator needs to touch on and really proving the criticality and the usefulness of this function?
Sure. So, I'll touch on that and then I'll hand it over to Todd. What I see from across the nation when I talk to guys is answering and demystifying some of the questions like archive retention. Like we talk about 30, 60, 90 days, how are you maintaining that? So we talk about a lot of these things, but then you talk to these engineers, the dealers and manufacturers, and they are doing everything in the front end. They're going to a calculator, they've got all these frames per second in motion, but no one, and I mean no one, has a field-based solution to make sure that those are actually happening. That's what we do, is we ensure that the design thresholds that you were set at the very beginning, they're actually happening in the field. So the frames per second, the resolution that was required, for a real world, you need 5 megapixel here, a big resolution in this lobby. Is that actually happening on a daily basis? Are those cameras up? Are you getting 90 days of retention? That's a big one that people do not have an answer for. And then, I'll let Todd kind of speak to what happens in his business.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Josh. I mean, as Josh said, there's a lot of different points of criticality in a security network today, and what I find is that the traditional security people who are in charge of security, they're not aware of the IP technology. I spent 16 and a half years as an IT specialist, and I still don't know everything about networks and what's going on in a network. It takes an awful long time to become very proficient at that. And so Unitrix helps me to be able to hire more staff to put out in the field that don't necessarily have to have a depth of IT knowledge. All they've got to be able to do is have an open mind to reading and interpreting and understanding some of the metrics and the reports that are coming out of Unitrix, and that really helps them become aware of what issues are out there in the back end. And then it's all just training at that point as to how to alleviate some of those issues based upon what sensors you're seeing going into the yellow or going into the red on some of these dashboards here. As far as criticality, Barb, you asked about regulated environments. We have a few customers as Pentava who are in regulated environments or legislated environments such as casinos and law enforcement utilities, where they're being dictated to that they have to have either 30 days of retention, or they have to have cameras up and running 24/7. And of course, ViewNetrix not only helps provide the fact that the camera is up and pinging properly, but it is also, as Josh alluded to in the canary in the coal mine, it has sufficient bandwidth coming out of the camera that you know that the image that's coming off of that camera is one that is usable. If it falls below a certain rate or below a certain threshold of bandwidth, then obviously you're getting a garbage image out of it. And so those are the kinds of things that ViewNetrix helps you pick up, whereas video management system may just say, well, the camera's recording, so all is well.
Okay, thanks. And speaking of regulated environments, besides casinos, law enforcement, who else is using ViewNetrix? I mean, is this something that spans across either the size of the enterprise as well as the vertical?
So that's a good question. It really does span, and what Todd and I have worked on as being one of our main dealers is that we started to see that the large market is easy for us. I mean, if you're over 200 cameras, it's a no-brainer. I mean, I'll be able to sell that with you every time because just the sheer size, I can sell the dealer on it, which is you guys. You guys should be putting in, whether it's us or something, you guys should have something to manage the health of that network. It just becomes too big to be able to manage with a very simple tool that might come with like Exact or something. So you should have some proactive management, and you should definitely be selling those services and generating revenue for your business. If you're not, you're missing out. The smaller market is the tougher part because, you know, I can see that under 50 cameras that sometimes it doesn't make a ton of sense, right? Like, but what we've developed is the cloud technology. And so what the cloud technology allows you to do is in a very cost-effective manner deploy health monitoring in almost instantaneously. We can get that out in under a half hour. No boxes need to be shipped. We do it through secure internet access. We can start to manage those 10, 20, 30 camera deployments. And that's less for those end users, and it's more for you as the dealer to understand what's happening so you can manage that more effectively. And Todd's a big cloud user, so I'll let him kind of talk about what that means from an integrator's perspective.
Yeah, the cloud has been an absolute lifesaver for us. We have several small clients, but they're very, I guess you could say they're very needy clients. They have camera systems that you know, are not always up and running. And many of the times the issues that we've run into with some of these guys is the fact that they have a very small workforce, so they don't have dedicated security staff. They rely on those cameras all the time to be up and running. They, you know, one of them is an exclusive golf club, let's call them, golf and country club, and they've run into several thefts of clubs out of the back of folks' vehicles or, you know, out of lockers and stuff like that. And they want to be able to rest assured that when a theft does occur and it's reported by that member of the club, that they have something to go back to. The club members see all kinds of surveillance cameras outside pointing in the parking lot. They want to be able to rest assured that when they park their SUV in what they believe is a field of view of a camera, that anybody that breaks into their car, you'll get a good record out of them. And what we found in numerous occasions is RAID arrays would fail. Not just one hard drive would fail, but 2 or 3 at the same time. And because nobody's going to check on these servers, because nobody's looking at the health of the network and of the NVRs, nobody knows that these things are dead until somebody goes to go and perform a post-incident analysis or review video. All of a sudden, they find out that they haven't had video recording on these cameras because a RAID array has been dead for 6 months. Well, that doesn't help them and the confidence of their club members and of the dues that they pay that should be going towards making sure that a security system is up and running. So ViewNetrix for that really in the cloud has been very, very helpful because they can purchase just a few sensors on an individual sensor-by-sensor basis, have it monitored by a cloud, not have to worry about the cost of installing, maintaining, and running an appliance-based solution. And then they have the confidence that if a camera is going to go down or if a hard drive dies in a RAID 5 array, that their integrator, us, will be notified of that right away, and we'll go out there to replace it before it becomes a RAID failure, and the entire NBR has gone dead.
Awesome stuff. Thanks, guys. Josh and Todd, that looks like all the questions that we've got coming in over the line. And everybody on the line, if you would like to review this presentation again, it is recorded, and or pass it on to the folks who couldn't attend today. We will have a recorded version of it posted next week. You can find it on our website, and that's buypsa.com/education. So that's buypsa.com/education. I want to thank very much Josh Snow with Vunetrix and Todd with Contava. Josh's contact information is posted right here for questions after the presentation. And please do visit our website to check out everything that PSA Security Network has to offer, including future webinar events and this recording, and also the other business solutions and educational offerings. So this is going to conclude our presentation for today. Thanks again, Josh and Todd, and everyone have a great day.
Thank you.
Thanks for your time.